What exactly does ethical decision making mean and it imply when ethics itself is such a subjective matter?
Not only subjective, it's very unethical to arrive early for dinner. You're going to arrive, you're going to make them feel like, oh my gosh, we are not ready for you. It's not a nice thing to do to someone.
Many decisions are slowly moving from human mind to artificial intelligence. Does it inspire more concerns or possibilities?
Definitely concerns.
There is also a lot of literature about striking a balance instead of taking decisions in favor of one approach or another. Does it always fit into your worldview of decision making?
Oh, of course, there's many situations like that.
Right.
And your ethics is different to my ethics. And my ethics is different to my brother's ethics. Because we're all individual. So figuring out what is the ethical decision, it's not super easy.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Today we have Dr. Katherine Hunt joining us to discuss a very important topic, that is ethical decision making. Dr. Katherine is a behavioral scientist and ethicist with a background in finance, regulation, and science. Dr. Katherine, please welcome to the podcast and give us a small introduction about yourself.
Thank you for having me. Thank you to all of your listeners as well for taking the time to extend their decision-making ability. So I live in the world of ethics and psychology these days, and as you know, the theory is fun, it's nice to learn about, but really it's all about, well, how can we make better decisions?
Okay.
So hopefully if they listen to a little bit more of you and I chatting, then they can make some better decisions, as we all can.
And I would just like to add a few lines here that Dr. Katherine, though very humble, is actually very, very accomplished. She has done various degrees, even written textbooks. She's also faculty in many colleges where she has taught about various subjects, and she has also spent a lot of time studying different areas, including psychology, law, science. It's a great pleasure to have you on the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be involved, but going through my own CV is boring even for me. So I don't need to recount it for your poor audience.
Sure, no worries. So, Dr. Katherine, I think on ethical decision making, I think we should start with the first question first. That is, what exactly does ethical decision making mean and it imply when ethics itself is such a subjective matter?
Not only subjective, but also context specific.
Right.
So, for example, it's very unethical to arrive early for dinner. If your friend invites you for dinner and you arrive 1 hour early, you're going to make them feel like, oh my gosh, we are not ready for you, right? It's not a nice thing to do to someone. You're better off just waiting in the park nearby and enjoying yourself or something. But that's in general. But on the other hand, I had a meeting yesterday at the beach, which was an after surf meeting. So I surf in the morning, I surf in the ocean on my little surfboard here on the east coast of Australia.
Okay.
And I'd said to someone in my sector, I'll meet you after surf at the beach for a little chat. There's some really nice chairs there, and we're just going to chat about the future of AI and space and all kinds of things and ethics. And what happened was the surf was not very good at all. And so I walked up the beach out of the surf, and there I saw Clinton, who I was going to be meeting, but I wasn't supposed to meet him for another hour. And I was like, oh, hi, I'm early. And he said, how great, how good is this? So you can see, and of course after I got out of my wetsuit and whatnot, we started chatting an hour early. Now, if I'd have arrived to his office or to his house an hour early, it would have been an absolute mess. So part of it is our own subjective ethics, like you've mentioned,
Right.
and your ethics is different to my ethics. And my ethics is different to my brother's ethics, because we're all individual, aren't we?
Right.
But similarly, my ethics are even different to my own ethics in a different environment. So figuring out what is the ethical decision in this context, it's not super easy. Not at all.
What I understand is what can sound like very natural and simple, like meeting somebody, but leaving or reaching 1 hour early can be slightly subjective, right? Because that guy may not be prepared. And the same thing when you arrive late, right? If that guy's prepared at 9 o'clock for you and you make him wait and reach like 1 hour later,
But-
that's also kind of
1 hour late, but if they have 3 small children under 5
right.
and you arrive 1 hour late, they'll say, thank God you're late. I mean, you can't imagine what happened in the last hour, right? Like,
Right, that's true.
So
Okay.
again, it changes again, and it's not ethical to be late.
Okay.
Except there's some situations.
It's up to you what you we'll go deeper into the question, but probably there is a lot of play about individuals' own intentions here, actually. Okay.
Yeah, and those around us, though. So we are a social animal.
Right.
neither you nor I could survive alone in the jungle for
Right.
very long. Not long
Right.
at all. Because we just kind of need someone to watch our back
Right.
while we sleep. And we need, if we're going to hunt, it's much easier with two people. If we're going to plant vegetables, it's so much easier with two people, even better with 200, right? So that's why we didn't grow up as individuals all over the world. Instead, we grew up in towns because we are social, which means that if we make any decision that's based on me, my values, and my context right now, without thinking around how might this impact the people around me, my family, my friends, my community, that's also not right. Because we don't exist in isolation. We can't. There is no such thing. You are not ever an individual, no offense. But neither am I, right? We always exist within a social structure.
So we are always into relationship, and ethics kind of imagined without the relationships playing a role here. So if we are all put up together, how we relate to each other and how we act in that relationship is also a central matter in this. Okay. Very
It's super
interesting.
important. And you know it's important because if there's a plane crash, which happens quite frequently, despite how much we hope it doesn't, no one says, oh no, how much was the plane worth? Oh, what about the cargo? Was it really valuable? Oh no, the money. No one says that. Everyone's like, oh, the lives, the humans. That's someone's family, that's someone's friends, right?
Right,
So
right.
we care about people.
Right.
And that means if we see someone making a decision that impacts money, yeah, okay, do whatever you want. It's whatever. But if we see someone that makes a decision that impacts other people, which is every decision, then we're quite interested in this. Even though we don't even know anyone involved,
Okay.
we're still
Right.
like, yeah, it's all about the people. Right?
The fact that human beings care about each other and nature also probably, and so that is what they want to see in each every decision, that those things have been taken care of.
Yeah, that's how we'll be judged from the outside in particular, right? Because part of it is,
Yeah.
as you mentioned before, I want to know that I'm making a good decision for my values and for my context,
Right.
for what I believe is right and wrong. But the other side is what someone's looking at me and thinking, why did you make that decision, Catherine?
Right. Interesting. Very
So the
interesting.
perception is another thing entirely.
Catherine, just a side question. In the current age, many decisions are slowly moving from human mind to artificial intelligence, right? AI. How do you see this transition, and does it inspire more concerns or possibilities?
I think definitely concerns. It's, of course, there's yin and yang in everything. There's a little bit of balance everywhere. We
Right.
know that AI in general should be a force for good. It should be able to leverage all of our output. But if we just look at our decision making, for example, so I like to use this example of a toddler. So my nephew is 3 years old. Now, I can't say to him, could you please put on a shirt? Because he'll say, no, I don't want to put on a shirt. But if I say to him, would you like to put on a red shirt or a blue shirt? He'll say, red.
Okay.
And then he'll put on his shirt, no problem, right? So rather than saying this open-ended, big picture thing, if I just give him two choices, and both of them I'm happy with, he'll choose one of them. He'll feel empowered, like he's made the decision. Now, this is exactly what's happening with AI right now. Because when I use AI, and I use it a few hours a day, because it's an integral research assistant for me,
Right, right.
what happens is it is, whether I like it or not, curating my options. AI is saying to me, blue shirt or red shirt, Catherine? It's not saying to me, do you want to put on a shirt, right?
Okay, right.
It's going out there and it's saying, actually, I think this information's right, this information's right, this information's right. So I might feel like I'm the one who's making the final decision. I'm choosing the blue shirt.
Right.
Meanwhile, the AI is in the background going, yeah, well done, yes, you made the decision all by yourself.
Okay.
So what that means is our decision-making ability is within the windows of what AI gives us in the first place.
Okay, that's so. What you're saying is, like, earlier, without the days of AI, when we had a question or something to make a decision, we'll apply our minds. First, we'll think whether we want to do it or not. And then we will explore all the options. But now,
All of them, not even
Yeah.
blue and red, but the green and the yellow
Yeah.
and the orange
and now,
and the one that's got all the colors. Yeah, like
right.
that's
So-
that's the way our brain would naturally work, but
Right.
only if we let it.
Right.
And that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Our brain uses 40% of our calories. So
That's a
thinking is hard.
very interesting point because, forget everything else like jobs and all the things. One of the impact that AI is definitely going to have is to kind of make our minds more lazier, right? Because everything that you want, all the options are already on your plate. You just have to choose one, right? So in the context of decision making, as we were discussing, you were saying that all the decisions AI has already made. In a way, it
Well,
has
it's,
created
it's even if you're not letting it make the final decision, it's giving you the options to choose from.
Correct. The more sophisticated systems also might be taking the final decision also, right? Where human beings are not involved in the loop, like you understand what I say, right? Like in the defense, let's say, or in, let's say, traffic,
Oh.
they might be taking a lot of decisions and without even realizing that we may be giving a lot of power to AI, right? And kind of, so that's where also I was coming to, like that can also be very concerning in the long run, right? Okay.
Absolutely. And this is nothing new. I've been teaching this for more than 5 years. 5 years ago, I was talking about autonomous vehicles, and it's still a topic, right? So autonomous vehicles run using AI. Now, how do they program them in terms of you're an autonomous vehicle, you're driving along the road, and suddenly there's a robbery on one side of the road, and so 5 people run onto the road, adults they are. But at the same time, a child loses its balloon and runs on the road from the other side, and there's a car coming from the other side too. So there's nowhere you can go. What is the AI-driven car going to do? It's going to have to do something. It's going to have to choose to kill the one child, potentially.
Okay.
And this is something that happens in the world, right? Like,
Right.
it's not, oh, that's so random. It happens. Accidents like this happen. Or will it kill the 5 adults? How would we make that choice? So you and I would think, okay, if we had time to think through this, we might know what our answer might be. But we're not the ones who are driving. It's a pre-programmed AI. And that's 5 years ago I was teaching that. So you can imagine the kind of decisions that are relevant now, like you mentioned in war, for example.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and so AI is always going to be limited in terms of decision making because it cannot have the same level of conscience which a human being has. Probably a lot of knowledge it can have, but a self-driving car, there's always going to be that moment where you have to decide whom to hit. Okay, interesting.
Absolutely. It can never know the full context.
Okay.
So you can imagine you might say to an AI, hey, I'm driving along a country road and there's a man hitchhiking. Hey, give me a ride. I'm just going to the closest town.
Right.
Should I stop and give him a hand?
Okay.
Give him a ride. I recognize him. Should I stop or should I just pretend I don't see him and keep driving? The AI will probably say, if you're in a safe area, in a safe country, like both you and I are, it's probably... maybe you should stop, right? But the
Right,
AI
right.
doesn't know that when you were in primary school, that guy was a bully.
Right. Okay.
The AI doesn't know that guy, the reason he's hitchhiking is because he gambled away all of his family's money and he's a thief,
Right.
right? The AI doesn't, you know that because you're in community
Right.
and you care about people and you wish
Right.
you could help him, but
Probably,
you've never
yeah.
been close enough to help him. But you know that context. The AI will never know that context. And so, like, these examples are kind of comical and, like, extreme to paint the picture to realize that it's not that the AI is necessarily going to make the wrong decision. It's just that it's never going to have the complete information.
So, that's a very interesting point that you brought because let's say for all good reasons we program the AI to take the right decisions also. Then also it can take incomplete decisions. And we are not even discussing where some kind of computer programmers have actually programmed AI to take wrong decisions, okay? We are not even talking about that. We are talking about those safe places where we have given a lot of knowledge to AI to take right decisions. And even there it can fail because it doesn't have the complete context of the society, the community, the past, of behavior of the people. It is just kind of based on the current resources and all those things it is taking decisions. Okay, very interesting.
And it can never, is the point, right?
Right.
You can
right.
imagine, like, you can imagine a world where, but if we all wear an AI and it listens to all of us and it sees our interactions, sees body language, then it will know everything. But I hope we never get to the point where it even knows our intuition. That it, you know, that feeling of this person I trust. Yeah, there's something in their eyes. Yeah, trust them 100%. And I've just met them. And some people you meet, nope.
Okay.
My intuition says no.
Okay.
Right? It'll never have that.
Right.
But it might, through wearables in the future, it might have access to a lot
Yeah, I
more
mean,
contextual
it has
data.
shocked the world in a lot of ways by its capabilities. We never know where it is heading. But yeah.
Absolutely.
Moving to the next question, Catherine. Ethical decision making can also be not so profitable in the short run, right? And understanding of ethical decision can also be slightly vague, as we are discussing, right? Like whether to protect a forest land or allow commercial developments to support livelihood of people, right? To allow industry with packaged food or support absolutely organic way of eating. You know? With these kind of complexities of life and livelihood, is there any framework that you advocate for taking the right decision?
So my framework is the Aspire Ethical Decision Making Framework,
Okay.
which is the best ethical decision making framework that we can use to work through a complex decision like that and figure out what's the right answer. So we start with alignment with our values. What are our values and what virtues are we trying to aspire to here? S, stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders who don't even know they're stakeholders? Let's list them all out and what are the potential implications on all of them from our different courses of action. P, protection. How can we make sure that we're managing risk regardless? We don't want to make our world go backwards at the very least.
Okay.
C, hang on, ESP, I comes next in Aspire, not C. I is for integrity.
Okay.
So how can we make sure that there's that alignment throughout with our values, with the stakeholders, etc. R is for review, which should happen before the end, because did we even ask the right questions throughout this? Did we identify the right stakeholders? Now that we've followed a few more steps, how are we going? Have we done a full 360-degree review? Have we asked the right people? And of course, E is let's actually execute on this. Let's do it. Let's not just put it on a bit of paper and, file that.
Okay. Let's take the final action. Okay. That's very interesting. So you're saying, just to kind of understand it deeply, in the same context of, let us say, where we want to decide whether we want to occupy a certain area of forest land for commercial development because you want to support livelihood around it. So aspire, what would it translate into? Let's say, so A you said is
alignment with values.
Alignment with values, and here.
So what are the values of that community who it might support?
Okay. And of course the values in
because
terms of nature also, right? Like we want to protect nature.
Yeah,
But-
and some people, like if you're a hunter or a farmer, your value is yes, protect nature, right?
Right,
Absolutely.
right.
But if you are not, if you're an urban dweller and you run a small factory manufacturing, sewing needles, maybe your values are around advancing civilization
Okay.
rather than nature. So regardless, we need to know who are we dealing with, what are our values as a community before we
Right.
begin.
Okay.
Because if we're all here to advance civilization, we're here to advance our standard of living. We want to make sure that everyone goes from where we live now to having access to better standard of living, however we define that.
Okay.
And that's our driving value. That'll drive our.
It's a very interesting word, alignment, because
This is a reminder
it
from
says
Philippines.
not only that you
you
just stick with one value, but you kind of find out all the values of people there and then develop an alignment around it. So you're saying that some people even may feel that, let's say, nature is important, but let's say on the 90% people agree that some part of forest probably we can allow for commercial development. Then you have got an alignment there, right? And that
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, which can be quite hard because in some of those examples you mentioned, someone will say that's the right answer, and someone else will say that's the right answer to the other thing, to the other option, right?
Okay. Right.
Because
So-
we all have different perspectives. So how do we balance that out?
Okay, it's an act of balancing actually. In a way.
Yeah, and recognizing the trade-offs, and sometimes being able to be brave to say
Even
this
though-
community has identified that for this community this is the right action, and they're willing to sacrifice what
Right.
they know is a sacrifice. It might be that they're sacrificing nature, and biodiversity, and thus maybe their longevity as a humankind, right? But they recognize that they're willing to sacrifice that, and they say, and we as a community are saying we will sacrifice that, and we know what it is. We're not blindly going into this. We know that. Or on the other hand, the community might say, we know that our standard of living might not jump. It might go to here, and we're willing to sacrifice that in order to protect our biodiversity and our natural world. It's so hard because it's so rare that there's a right-wrong answer.
Yeah, the reason why I came up with this example also because there are a lot of places where, this deforestation is happening because population is increasing and you are always on the verge of taking this decision, and there are always people who are activists, right, who always push the government like you should not do kind of deforestation here because it can affect the biodiversity, as you mentioned, right? And there is always this, push and pull happening where what is the right decision, right? And we also kind of, whether we're part of the decision or not, but we do want to understand.
But in that example, it's much more clear cut because that's not a community. Where's the stakeholders, right? In that example you're saying, there's a massive, probably international company, right, who owns the land.
Right.
The stakeholders are not considered. Right, so stop. Stop. Who are the stakeholders? It's the people who live around there. It's the community. It's the people of that country. Yes, the stakeholders are also the shareholders of this international company, but they're not given equal weight. Not in that example.
It's now that I think about it, stakeholders' portion is also very important, probably because ownership is involved here, right, in a way. And even though the company might be owning the land, but there is a natural ownership of the people who live there, right? And how can you kind of just discard it? And
no, it's impossible. I mean, an international company that says, oh, we decided the best thing for us is to put all of our waste into the river because that's what's best for our stakeholders, our shareholders back in Australia or the US or the UK. No, no. The stakeholders on the ground are they matter more in that example. I think that's.
I think the natural stakeholders should be given a lot of importance, and not just you cannot just drive your way through use for business or from the money point of view. That's what I think we are, in a way, realizing in this example particularly. Yeah.
And the wonderful thing is, when it comes to stakeholders, if we're actually able to be open, this is the challenge, right? If it is in this is kind of such an extreme example, a big international logging company, they're in a difficult spot themselves, right, as individuals, because their livelihood is tied up anyway. So, but this example, you can imagine that if they went to the local communities who were affected within, say, 500-kilometre radius, and they talked to them and they said, we need to send wood and money back to our shareholders or we're all going to be fired. What can we do with this land? Right now it has trees and beautiful wildlife on it. What do you think we can do? I would bet $1 billion that the local communities would not all say, I don't care what you do, go away, right? They would say, well, have you considered, there's this other idea. My grandparents, they did this thing where they actually harvested a small amount, replanted it immediately, harvested the next. They actually were able to just rotate. There's a good chance if we did the maths, you might be able to use 10% of your land and da-da-da-da-da-da, and then someone else will come through and say, what about if we plant like a mushroom forest at the same time and that creates such biodiversity? We can never know what the stakeholders will come up with because people are very smart. But we need to make sure that we ask them for their ideas.
So you're saying here engagement of stakeholders is also very important because it's not always like a zero sum, like either do this or do that. There is a possibility that some more ideas can come, people can be creative and kind of, if people are actually interested. And as we discussed in the beginning, right, the relationship aspect is also important. So that is coming to play here that, like big company, they are also eventually people, right, human beings, and even the community people. And if they kind of understand and care for each other, automatically they would at least arrive at some conclusions which might be beneficial to both of them and to nature, biodiversity, as you were mentioning, right? But that dialogue has to happen and that stakeholder management has to happen in a way. Okay, very interesting.
And if all they see, if they have a big home loan, a big mortgage on their house, and they have small children at home, and they get to work, and all they see is protesters, protesting what this thing I'm doing is paying for my family to have food and my family to have a roof. I don't like you, protesters. This is what they're going to think, right? Or straight away.
Right. Okay.
But if they're able to somehow one side and then ultimately both sides or all sides are able to be open enough to create a context for dialogue, a context for let's problem solve this together. We all have different obligations and different needs and different goals here. What are some win-win solutions, or at least not lose-lose solutions?
To all the audiences also, I would kind of at this point say that what Dr. Katherine just said, right, kind of opens windows actually, because oftentimes we are under this impression that let's say some kind of a decision has been taken, whether it should be allowed or not allowed, right, followed or not followed, but we don't think that when we go deeper into the conversation, we involve the stakeholders, some other options can also open up which were not initially thought about. And this is I think very good direction which we can take actually. So moving on to the next question, Dr. Katherine. There is also a lot of literature about striking a balance instead of taking decisions in favor of one approach or another, right? But does it always fit into your worldview of decision making, ethical decision making, that you always have to balance? Or there can be situations where you would say, even if let's say 80% people think like this, I am still going to, this is not ethical.
Oh, of course, there's many situations like that. Absolutely.
Okay.
And the opposite is also true, for sure. So what we know is, broadly speaking, that as a community, it might be as a country or as a local government, which has its own rules, we have our own ethics. We have our own morals. We have our own, this is the way it's done here. And then at some point, the law comes in, or the guys who write the law, the politicians, they come in and they say, this is how it's done here. Let's put that into law. And then they make laws on it, right? But the laws are always a little bit too late. A little bit like, well, we're already doing that, so thank you. And that's because they formalize ethics. So there are always going to be a situation, say, for example, in Australia, when we're driving past a school, like a primary school or something, instead of in the town, we can usually go, it depends on the town, I suppose, but usually say 50 kilometers per hour in the town we can drive. But if we're going past a school, maybe we have to go 40 or in some places 30 kilometers per hour. Now, these rules, they didn't come into effect from the government. Like, I don't even know if they have children. They probably don't think about that kind of thing, right? They came into effect because the parents at the school were like, this is crazy. You can't just drive past the school at 50 kilometers an hour. You have to slow down. It's a school zone. And so that's the ethics becoming formalized. But having said that, in maybe, say in Australia, as an example, say maybe in the 1960s, when the speed limit was 60, in fact, in towns, and people thought going at 60 was fine. No problem. Past the school, no problem. But then in the 70s, people thought actually in town we should go 50. Everyone kind of slowed down a little bit in town. And then maybe in the 80s and the 90s, everyone was like, hang on, we should go different speeds at different places. Like another child just got hurt by a car. So we should start to do this in our town, in our community. We should go slower. We'll put in speed bumps or crossings or people with yellow stop signs, whatever. All these different community initiatives. But the progression of that, at some point, only 10% of the people thought you should slow down at a school zone. And then 20%. And then 30%. And then 40%. So ideas morph, and sometimes they start in a small group of people, and then they might grow to encompass 80% of the people. In which case that's fine, but often the right idea might stay in a small group of people just as likely.
Because you see, giving you a realistic example, it's very common, particularly in India, right? Like there will be a lot of these court cases where there is this air that this is the right decision, based on a lot of theories and a lot of proofs and evidences, but when it goes to the court, the judges, based on their own discretion and their own sensibility, kind of oftentimes completely avoid.
Do they? You have common law, right?
Yeah. So what happens is there is a Supreme Court, right? So there are multiple courts in India. There are the smaller courts, and if the dispute doesn't get resolved, it goes to the higher court, and there is something called Supreme Court, which is like nobody can dispute whatever they have said. So the judges there who are sitting in the Supreme Court, it's not very uncommon for them to revert the decisions that have been made in the lower courts actually.
Yeah.
It happens pretty commonly in India. The point that I'm trying to put is like it's a lot of responsibility on the Supreme Court judge, because oftentimes there will be a lot of air around the decisions that have been taken kind of by the taken by the lower courts, and people will be like, it represents the mass sentiment also. But the Supreme Court judge, he doesn't care about the mass sentiment. In fact, they oftentimes they just close themselves because they don't want to be influenced by all the mass hysteria or whatever, and they will simply go by the constitution of the country, articles of it, and they will read everything thoroughly because mass sentiments can also be wrong at times, right? They can be unethical. So in those lines, I was kind of when everybody's against you, in a way, right? It's because the Supreme Court has, let's say, 3 or 4 judges, right? And there can be difficult decisions to make where, let's say, 80% of the population is against you, but still you understand what is right based on your sensibilities, based on your understanding of the Constitution, and you can take those kind of strong decisions, right? So what's your take on these kind of challenges which are not uncommon in today's world, right? When you see around also in the global context.
And also based on your experience.
Correct.
So say, for example, let's pick a really hot topic that's always has been and always will be a hot topic. Let's pick a topic of racism. Okay.
Okay.
Now imagine if every interaction you had with someone who looks like me, we were violent, we were abusive,
Right.
we were stealing things, we were the worst version
Right.
of a human. Okay. And you'd come across 100 people who look like me, and every single time it was this like, oh my God, again, has that happened again? Like it happened to me, that's your experience, right? That's
Right.
your actual real experience.
Right.
And then the law says, and maybe a Supreme Court judge says, look, you definitely can't judge someone based on how they look. They might look like Catherine, but you can't judge them based on that. And you're like, logically, I agree. But
Okay.
you haven't met Catherine
Okay.
or
Right.
all the other Catherines.
Right. Okay.
So it can be so complicated. The reality is, right, that example is kind of comical because it never happens that it's every single experience.
Right.
It's
Right.
always that our brains pick up on 1 or 2 memorable moments, and then we
Right.
kind of overgeneralize, and we
Right.
we get lazy, right? Back to the start of our conversation. We take the lazy path, which is to not think through, but to just generalize and try and do this. And the Supreme Court judges, their job is to not generalize and to not base it on their actual lived experience of the world, but to work through something like the Aspire ethical decision-making framework to come up with
Right.
the right answer. And so the most interesting thing about judges is they are effectively professional decision makers. That's their job, is to make a decision. Whether they're Supreme Court or the District Court or somewhere in between, they are professional decision makers.
Right.
And we know there's a heap of research done on judges that
Right.
shows when they make good decisions and when they make bad decisions that are just not aligned with logic. And what that means is we can learn a lot from judges, but it also means we can expect judges to make logical, really well thought out decisions, but we can also expect that from ourselves.
The point that you mentioned, right? Like based on our past experiences, we tend to overgeneralize at times, and kind of, let's say I met 100 people of certain color who had done something bad in the past, let's say 20 years back, and that maybe not directly to me, but I have heard those stories, and that thing kind of shapes up in my mind. And then when I meet some kind of people, all those feelings are coming inside me, like all the violence that happened in the past, and it's difficult to forgive and go ahead, and probably you're judging people all the time, right? That's what is happening. And as a judge or any ethical decision maker, one of the things that you have to do is kind of your own conditionings you have to give up, at least for the time being when you're taking the decision, so that you can kind of take the most purest decision, let's say unbiased decision. I don't know how whether it's easy or whether it is possible also as a 100% thing, but that's where I think the complexities will start. Okay, very
Absolutely. And we can all do that. We can all take a moment to just step back and
Okay.
say, okay, but what are my values again? Can I just remember what they are? And what
Okay.
are the virtues that I'm aspiring to in my
Right.
life right now? Can I just start with that?
Okay.
Okay, now who's this going to affect?
Okay.
Oh, more people than I thought. Okay.
Okay.
And now, like, just that 10 seconds of thought can often give us enough space. We often need a space between the moment and the decision so that we can just look at it. Oh, it's okay. I understand what I need to do without the heat of the moment and the rush decision.
Okay, so saying this in a very interesting point that we should take some space between the moment and taking a decision, because in that space, we as human beings actually have this capacity to give up our conditionings or deep belief for some time, and provide this a human quality where you can actually take good decisions by giving kind of disengaging from the past for certain moments.
Yeah, the space. Even if we don't remember any decision-making frameworks or we don't care, but just to take 5 breaths.
Okay, I
And
think that framework we can always remember. Take this 5 moments before you make a decision, and probably you will be at the best of your. Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Catherine, for that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
But remember, when it comes to other people, and if we see someone else who's really emotional, it looks to us like they're going to make a bad decision to us, like they're going to say or do something that they might regret later. The challenge is, the line I love is, never in the history of calming down has anyone ever calmed down from being told to calm down.
Okay, probably
So-
you have to. Okay.
Yeah, we can do this for ourselves,
Okay.
but for doing it with other people, we have to be a little bit more nuanced. We can't just say, take 5 breaths, because then they'll be like, oh, now I'm really going to
Bust out. Okay.
act on whatever it is I'm feeling.
Right. That's a very interesting point. Okay. I think adding to that question, and we are kind of coming to the end of this conversation. The last question that I had in mind is like a lot of decisions that we see around ourselves, right, with respect to, let's say, military, neighboring countries, climate, political viewpoints, seem to be vastly driven by selfishness, right? And that is causing enormous impact on both the society and various systems of beliefs, right? People are in a way getting trained to believe that, hey, selfishness is good, or let's be selfish and get what we want, right? In a way, it's not uncommon. And in this confusion, what role do you think the common men, the everyday people who are not into, let's say, in the leadership or in politics or in the decision-making situation, what role can they play with their limited sphere of influence? What role they stand to play, essentially?
So something that we all should aspire to when it comes to especially selfishness is to consider our sphere of influence and to try and expand that sphere to at least be at the community level. So an easy starting point is, I'm responsible for what I say and what I do.
Okay.
And maybe we take a day or two to think about, yes, I am responsible for that. But then we can expand that out and think, I'm also responsible for my family that lives under my roof to some extent. I'm responsible to make sure that they have good food or healthy food because I can work a little harder and then they can have better food. So I'm going to take a little bit more responsibility just to make sure that they have what they need. And I'm not going to tell them, this is an internal thought exercise. This isn't, okay, guys, I'm now responsible for you, right? This is an internal looking around, noticing how can I be a little bit more responsible in my family who live under my roof. And then the next step is, of course, what about in my street? Is there something, could I notice some things that are happening in my street, and could I take responsibility for that? Could I start to think, and I don't need to tell anyone, but if I notice there's a big pile of rubbish because it fell out of a garbage bin and no one's picked it up for a week because it's no one's, can I just say, well, I'm just going to take responsibility for that little corner of the street. I'm just going to tidy it up and I'm going to go along on my way. And then I'm going to keep my eye out for this street. And I'm going to make decisions as if I was responsible for this street. A little bit. Not in a stressful way, if there's people fighting and suffering. I mean, there's only so much that I can do. But within my control, I can think I'm responsible for this street. And then, of course, well, what about my town? What is there that I could do that I could take responsibility for and start to think, how could I help this town? Now, if we can get that in our minds, that which is I'm responsible for myself, my family to some extent, my street to some extent, my community to some extent. What that means is when it comes to making a selfish decision, I'm going to be thinking, okay, so this is a decision. How's it going to help my town? It's not how's it going to help me. Because I've got to help my town, right, with this decision, whatever this decision might be. Whether I'm able to cast a vote to open up a new bus route to a neighbouring town, for example, that has a lot of industry. How would this help my town? Not me, not the people under my roof or the people in my street, but my whole town. So to some extent, you can see that this kind of taking responsibility for as big an area as we can, and then once you are Prime Minister, you can say I'm responsible for my country. And then once you're Secretary General of the UN, you can say, I'm responsible for the world now, which is fantastic. But if we even can extend it to the town and community, we can see that what might be perceived as a selfish decision, where I'm putting my community first, is actually very selfless. Because actually, I'm carrying on my shoulders the weight of the well-being of my whole town as best I can in that moment. Realistically, I am obliged to put my town before a random other town, shall we say. Now, that obligation is not massive, though. It's not a massive difference. So if it means that my town will thrive and the other town will collapse and die of starvation, but it's okay, I looked after my town. No. That definitely does not work, right? It doesn't work at all. That's not what we're looking at here. So it doesn't work in a situation of war, for example, provoking, being the first to act. Sure, defending ourselves, absolutely. And even making tariff decisions that benefit our country versus other countries. We can see how when we work through an ethical framework, we can see, to some extent it would be ethical for India to make that decision, shall we say, versus other against, and say, no, sorry US, we're putting a tariff on your stuff. Because what's right for India is this. We can see how there are many situations where that could be ethical. But in the bigger kind of stuff in war, then it's...
Let's not even go there, I think, for today. Yeah, I mean, so what I understood is like being responsible has this quality of kind of making you ethical, at least in your parlance. Like slowly, you don't have to go kind of outside your comfort zone. Whatever you can do, like if you're part of certain, let's say, conversation, you can put your thoughts like, hey, this is what I feel is the right thing to do. Wherever your influence is, instead of trying to increase your area of influence, whatever is your current sphere of influence, in that sphere, if you can be ethical, if you can be responsible, the responsibility automatically kind of brings, it makes you ethical. It has this human quality. And of course, as I mentioned, there will be areas where, let's say, you're part of some community and there is another community. You will probably try to prioritize your community first because you're obligated. There is nothing wrong, but there is again this idea of balancing, as we had discussed earlier also, where you don't want to say, okay, my community is important, your community is not important. That's not the right approach to do. You want to support people, elevate people, not kind of on the cost of, becoming jingoistic towards others or something. There are other communities, I just want to give more contribution to my communities. That is the kind of attitude. Probably slowly things will change and everybody will kind of, your decision making will be more ethical and you will sleep happily in the night probably, that I've not done anything bad towards others. I just try to kind of uplift whomever I can. Yeah.
And because of our interconnectedness, the reality is, if we somehow hurt the village next to us or the town next to us, it will negatively impact us in the long term anyway. It benefits my village when all the villages are good.
Yeah. I mean, this interconnectedness is also something very important, probably a big topic again. But I think as human beings, we do sense that, like, it's not like you do something, it remains in that community only. Whatever you do somehow it affects everything. You will start seeing, the results of your actions everywhere very, very soon, particularly into this digital age with social media and all. Whatever anybody does, it impacts the whole community. So your sense of responsibility also should be, we should think that whatever we do impacts everybody and it will impact us only eventually, our community, our family, me also, right? So probably it's profitable to be ethical in the long run also. Just, on a lighter note.
Indeed. 100% agree with you. Love it. Great conclusion.
Sure. Okay. Dr. Catherine, it was great pleasure having this discussion with you. Thanks for taking time out and kind of, we have discussed a lot of topics and we deliberately left a lot of topics because there is nothing much to discuss there. Everybody knows what is right and wrong. Probably people are just, bent on doing the wrong things at times. Instead of worrying about them, let's worry about ourselves, what we do, what we feel, and how we make others around us feel and think, right? So, on that note, very, very thanks to you for taking time out and kind of coming on this podcast. Any last words that you would like to see, and then we can wrap up this discussion.
I'd just like to say thank you to your audience for sticking around and for being so committed to making the world a better place through one ethical decision at a time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Dr. Katherine. Have a nice day.
Thank you.